The rain began not with thunder, but with a sigh, a hush that rolled through the city's crooked chimneys and uneven shingles like a soft intake of breath. Down on the harbor stones, the drizzle softened the torchlight, bending its gold into ribbons across the puddled streets. The city, always a little weary, welcomed the weather like an old friend returning without words. Somewhere, high above the choked alleys and layered rooftops of the lower city, a rusted weather vane turned for the first time in weeks. It creaked once, a long, slow groan that no one heard but the rain itself. And across the winding lanes of the Eastway, where the cobbles ran slick with memory, a traveler stepped from shadow into lamplight. Their boots were mud-caked from the Kayantha road, their cloak too thin for this kind of night. But they moved with the calm of someone drawn toward a familiar rhythm. Not by map or memory, but by something more instinctive, the echo of a song, perhaps, just on the edge of hearing. There it was again. A voice. No, not a voice, a tone. Faint and thin, rising like mist from the river banks and coiling upward with the chimney's breath. It drifted, half-formed, through the drifting fog and empty doorways. You couldn't follow it exactly. It moved sideways, like smoke. But follow it they did. Through puddled courts and past quiet stables. Past doors bolted against the storm and lanterns flickering behind gauze-curtained glass. Past men with lowered hoods and eyes that glinted like copper in the gloom. Until the road turned. And the traveler found themselves before a crooked building with its signs swaying in the wet air, its wood faded but legible. The Elf Song Tavern. Its windows glowed warm with firelight. Candle flickers danced across glass speckled by the rain. And from somewhere within, somewhere beyond the oak and stone and laughter and ale, the song grew louder. No one stood at the door. No one beckoned. But the traveler reached out, pressed a damp palm to the iron latch, and stepped inside. And with that, the night began. The door to the Elf Song Tavern opened with the hush of damp wood parting reluctantly from its frame. The sound was subtle, like paper slowly tearing under water, and yet in the hush of that stormy evening, it was heard, not just by ears, but by walls long used to listening. Outside, the rain whispered like a secret too old to matter, trailing down the stone facades of the lower city in rivulets that curved and pooled around sagging barrels and warped cobbles. The harbor wind carried a scent of fish, wet iron, and the musk of old wood. It was a night wrapped in gray, a color that touched even the torchlight, muting its glow, softening its reach. Somewhere nearby, a bell had tolled earlier in the dusk, marking no particular hour, and then fallen quiet again. The traveler who entered was not extraordinary, either in gait nor in garb. But something about the weight of their steps suggested they had walked far, and with a purpose that had less to do with destination than escape. Their cloak, once crimson, now bore the stain of 100 roads, and the hem dripped with the memory of forgotten inns and muddy crossroads. Their eyes lifted, not to scan the room, but as if remembering the ceiling from a dream. Inside, the elf song was as it always was, dim, uneven in light, heavy with warmth not just from the hearth but from time itself. There was a smell of spiced wine and damp wool, mingling with the scent of soot and candle wax. A dog slept by the fire, its ears twitching in some other world. At the tables, regulars played cards in silence, the way people do when the game is just a rhythm to keep their hands busy while their minds drift. The Elf Song Tavern was named, as all locals knew, not for a bard, nor for any resident performer, but for the voice that sometimes filled its rafters, unbidden, unseen, but unmistakably their dash. And now, just as the traveler stepped in, it began. Not all at once, no. Like mist on a cold surface, it formed without shape, without direction. A single note. Then another, barely higher. Barely different. Then a melody, slow and curved like a river bend seen from above. It came from nowhere. and everywhere. The walls did not vibrate, but the air did, gently, as though uncertain whether it should disturb anyone. Conversations halted midward. A tankard remained half lifted. Dice were held in fingers that forgot to roll. No one looked toward the source. There was no point. The voice had no origin. It sang in Elvish, but not the Elvish that men spoke in courts or scribbled in spell books. This was older, a dialect of lament, shaped like the curve of an oar dipping into still water. Some said it was the spirit of a maiden who had once stood watch on the cliffs of Everesca, singing for a lover who never returned. Others claimed the song was older still, not a memory of a person, but of a people, echoing the sorrow of a civilization that had watched the stars change and could no longer follow their maps. Artland, the barkeep, wiped his hands on a towel that had never truly been clean. He knew better than to interrupt. His father had once told him, "The voice does not sing for applause. It sings because the stone remembers." That was all the explanation he'd ever needed. In the corner, an elderly dwarf closed his eyes and whispered a name under his breath, one never spoken outside this room. Near the fire, two children playing dice looked up in awe, the game forgotten, their hands frozen above the tabletop. Upstairs, behind a closed door, a bard tuned a harp, then slowly placed it back down, letting the strings rest in silence. The song rose, gently. It never demanded. The travelers stepped deeper inside. Their boots left a trail of raindrops that quickly vanished into the thirsty floorboards. No one greeted them. No one needed to. The tavern did not require introductions. It remembered everyone who entered, not by name, but by burden. They found a seat near the hearth, not far from the dog, and let their bodies settle with the kind of tiredness that didn't just live in muscles, but in memory. They ordered nothing. Their eyes remained fixed on the flames, which danced with the song, flickering to some inner rhythm only they knew. The voice reached a crescendo, if one could call it that, and then slipped, almost embarrassed, back into silence. Not a sound followed for a full minute. Then the tavern breathed again. Conversations resumed, albeit more quietly. A mug clinked. Cards were shuffled, hands steadier now. The ghost had sung, and for a time, she had let everyone feel a grief too ancient for words. Now she had gone. But the feeling lingered. Not sadness, not entirely. Something closer to recognition. As if everyone present had been reminded of something they had never known but had always missed. The fire cracked. Artland poured a glass of wine for no one in particular and placed it on the bar. He would drink it later, perhaps. Or not. The glass would sit until it evaporated. That, too, was tradition. A gust of wind pushed against the window panes, rattling them in their frames. Outside, the rain continued, heavier now. It had found its rhythm. The traveler closed their eyes. Behind the bar, a shelf lined with bottles of indeterminate origin gleamed faintly in the candlelight. Each bottle bore a label worn beyond reading, and none had moved in years. Above them, a single lantern swung on its hook, casting long shadows against the stone walls. The shadows moved like ghosts, or perhaps like memories, unsure whether they still belonged in this world. A soft cough from the corner. A log added to the hearth. Sparks floated upward and disappeared. The Elf Song Tavern was not a place of joy, nor sorrow. It was a place of remembrance. A place where stories were not told, but simply endured. And on nights like this, when the wind smelled of river silt and the song had sung, it felt like the whole city paused, just a little, to remember. The traveler sat without moving for what felt like hours. Somewhere in the distance, a bell rang. Once. Not from the tavern. From the street, perhaps. Or the river. Or a dream. and slowly, without quite realizing, the traveler let the weight of their eyes lower. Their breaths slowed. The crackle of the fire deepened. The murmurs of the room became a tide, soft and repetitive. And the voice of the elf song lingered, even in silence, as if it had not finished singing, only paused, until someone else needed to remember. The river beneath WYRM's crossing did not sleep. It murmured with the weight of tides and time, lapping endlessly at stone, wood, and memory. Its surface caught the dim flicker of torchlight like old gold, then shattered it into trembling slivers. On this rain-slicked evening, with the wind curling up from the Kayanta like a forgotten breath, the bridge was quieter than usual. WYRM's crossing was no ordinary span. It was a city in miniature, a long, narrow artery of trade and tension suspended between East and West Baldur's Gate. Shops jutted from its sides like teeth, their shutters creaking, their awnings trembling with the weight of weather. Taverns crouched low, pressed tight against one another as if for warmth. A temple bell rang from somewhere above, not to summon, not to warn, but as if to remind the stones below that time still moved, even when people did not. A barge passed beneath the bridge, its lantern swaying. The soft splash of its oars blended with the slow patter of rain. Two gulls perched on the railings above, feathers puffed, their heads turning in unison, watching not for fish, but for movement. There was a hush about them, a strange solemnity that even they seemed aware of. The cobbles of WYRM's crossing were worn to a polish, not from care, but from centuries of steps. Merchants, refugees, Templars, spies, pilgrims, ghosts, all had crossed here. Some returned. Some vanished. All left something behind. The bridge remembered. It had no eyes, but its silence was heavy with witness. Tonight, most stalls were shuttered, their owners having long since fled the wind. A few diehards remained, a candlemaker selling stubs, a half-orc hunched over crates of dried fish, a gnome tuning a cracked hurdy-gurdy. The music didn't carry far, muffled by mist and wood rot, but it hung around the bridge like the scent of coal smoke, stubborn and oddly comforting. Near the midpoint of the bridge, a structure hunched against the rain, the watchtower. Not tall, but broad and thick with reinforced stone, it had watched generations crawl across this narrow crossing. Inside, a pair of flaming fist guards played cards by lantern light. One scratched his chin. The other stared past the cards, lost in thought. Neither spoke. The rain on the roof was loud enough to be its own conversation. Outside the tower, a boy in a threadbare cloak sat cross-legged with a candle in a jar. He was not begging. He watched the water, eyes wide, unblinking, as though trying to learn its language. Occasionally, he whispered into the jar, then closed it quickly. A game, perhaps. Or a prayer. WYRM's crossing was filled with such moments. Small ones, overlooked ones. But they layered upon each other like silt, forming the quiet bedrock of the gate's soul. A woman passed, boots splashing in puddles, cloak flaring with wind. She carried a basket of herbs, lavender, yarrow, feverfew, tied with string and hope. Her face was tired, but not unkind. As she walked, she hummed, not loudly, not with any purpose. It was the hum of someone who had always hummed when crossing bridges, though she did not know why. At the far end of the bridge, a group of ravens huddled on a rusted signpost. One turned its head upside down, watching travelers with morbid curiosity. Another tugged at something in the gutter, a button, or a ring, or just a raindrop that refused to be caught. The bridge itself creaked, not often, but just enough to remind everyone that it was alive in its own way. Not sentient, no, but attentive. WYRM's crossing had seen sieges and sanctuaries. Love letters passed beneath cloaks, blades drawn in sudden fury, coins dropped with trembling fingers. It held all these in silence, offering no judgment, only witness. And the river? Always beneath, always speaking. Tonight it seemed to speak more softly, as though reluctant to disturb what little peace the storm had left. A lantern swayed above a shop door, its flames steady despite the wind. Inside, a halfling cobbler sat beside a small fire, working a boot's sole with quiet precision. He did not look up as people passed. But when the wind carried a child's laughter, brief, startling, real, his hands paused for a moment, as if remembering a face long gone. Then he resumed. WYRM's crossing, unlike the bustling markets or the brash taverns of the city, had no interest in spectacle. It was a place between places, a line drawn across water, and like all thresholds, it carried the weight of decisions not yet made. From one direction came the low roll of a wagon, its wheels groaning against the stone. From the other, a cloaked figure emerged, but drawn low, footsteps measured. They did not meet. But as they passed each other, they nodded, not in recognition, but in shared understanding that some journeys require no words. A boy in the shadows lit another candle in a jar. The guards in the tower laid down their cards. The woman with the herbs reached the far side and vanished into the dark. And above, through a rent in the clouds, a sliver of moonlight broke through, pale, imperfect, but there. The bridge glowed. Not brightly. Not enough for songs. But enough to remember. Enough to be remembered. There are markets in Baldur's Gate that blare with sound, shouting hawkers, clattering wares, the sharp tang of copper and sweat in the air. But not all trade is loud. Not all stalls are meant to draw crowds. On the far edge of the outer city, near where the alleys slouch into the lowlands and the fog settles early, there lies a place known only in murmurs, the Rain Market. It does not appear on maps. It does not open at dawn or close at dusk. It simply exists when the rain is steady enough and the air quiet enough for listening. No one builds the Rain Market. It gathers itself. A tarpaulin strung between two carts. A cracked table set beneath an overhang. An overturned crate that has learned the art of waiting. Sellers come not to sell, but to see who arrives. And buyers come not to buy, but to find something they did not know they needed. Tonight, the mist rolls thick along the cobbles, blurring lamps and softening edges. The streets are slick with old puddles and new footsteps. Somewhere, a dog barks once and is answered only by silence. A single lantern burns low, its flame wobbling behind rain-streaked glass. Beneath it stands an elderly woman wrapped in shawls, 6 layers deep and none the same color. Her stall, if it could be called that, is a blanket laid on stones, upon which rest dozens of tiny bottles. No labels. No prices. Just the glint of green and amber and violet in glass. She says nothing. She does not gesture. If you meet her gaze, she merely nods, once, as if to say the rain has already told her everything it needs to. A little farther down, beneath a warped awning nailed to the ribs of an abandoned smithy, a dwarf stirs something in a pot over a low flame. Not soup. Not quite. It smells of pine sap and cloves, but there's an iron edge to it, too, like an old forge remembering warmth. He ladles it into clay mugs for anyone who stops. Payment is not in coin, but in memories. He will not ask for them, but if you begin to speak of your brother's wedding or a mountain you once climbed, he will listen and nod and pour you another. The Rain Market speaks in soft sounds. The hiss of drizzle on tarps. The muffled drip from gutters. The occasional clink of something delicate being turned over in a cloth-wrapped hand. A merchant in a deep blue cloak offers charms carved from river stones, their surfaces etched with unreadable glyphs. He does not speak. When you approach, he turns them one by one in his palm, as if listening to their preferences, before offering you the one that hums faintly when touched. Children move through the market like shadows, their feet bare, their hands hidden in oversized sleeves. They do not beg. They run errands for stallholders or carry bundles wrapped in waxed canvas from one end of the market to the other. Occasionally, one stops beside you, whispers the name of a fruit you've never heard of, then disappears before you can ask what it means. There's a weaver whose loom is no larger than a bread box. She spins threads from damp air and silence, or so the story goes. Her scarves ripple with impossible patterns, colors that only appear when the rain is heavy, or when you are very sad, or when you forget what you came looking for. She hums as she works. Not a song. A thread of sound that winds its way through the market, comforting and strange. The rain market has no central square. It coils through alleyways and arches, ducks beneath eaves, slips down steps that vanish when the rain stops. Sometimes, entire stalls vanish mid-purchase. A customer turns to examine something under better light, and when they look back, the merchant is gone, as if folded back into the rain. A figure in pale robes sells weather, or so they claim. Not charms or rituals, but memories of days. A sun-warmed afternoon in AMN. A dry thunderstorm in the troll claws. The hush of snowfall in the high forest. The bottles clink like wind chimes as he moves. He does not offer dreams, only the memory of weather. You hold the corked glass near your ear and hear distant thunder. Not all goods in the rain market can be touched. There is a man who sells stories, but only one word at a time. You may pay him for a single word, and he will whisper it to you, with no explanation. You may return the next night for the second word. Few reach the end. Fewer still understand it. But some swear the first word changed everything. A shadow wrapped in velvet offers translations, not of language, but of gestures. She watches as you move, nods, and tells you what your posture meant to the wind, to the stones, to the cat watching you from the roof. Her voice is like steam over tea, warm then gone. A pile of leaves, dry despite the rain, marks the spot of the listener. No one has ever seen them arrive. They sit cross-legged, head bowed, a bowl in their lap. You speak your secrets. They say nothing. But when you leave, the world feels slightly lighter. The rain market is not a place of deals. It is a place of exchanges. You give something invisible and receive something you didn't know you were missing. A kindness. A reminder. The shape of grief made bearable. Tonight, a young man kneels before a candle that will not light. He is weeping, though not from sorrow. An old woman stands beside him, her hand on his shoulder. She says nothing, only watches the flame. Eventually it flickers. Just once. But he sees it. He smiles. A raven flies overhead, trailing a ribbon. No one knows from where. The rain softens. The weaver folds her loom. The dog barks again. And the market begins to fade, not all at once, but like breath on glass. First the scent of clove. Then the clink of bottles. Then the blue cloak, the smile behind a curtain, the warmth in your palm from the thing you never quite bought. The street remains. But the market has moved. Somewhere else, the rain is waiting. It stands tall, half forgotten in its own shadow, a monument of stone and steel, scarred by siege and soot, watching over the edge of the lower city like a sentinel grown weary of remembering. The Basilisk Gate. Not the grandest gate in Baldur's Gate, nor the most beautiful, but perhaps the most endured. Where others celebrate glory or conquest, this gate broods in silence, collecting the whispers of travelers, the whir of boothiels, the glances exchanged at twilight. By daylight, it is stern and gray. At night it breathes. Rain has washed the old scorch marks into jagged streaks that cling to the flanks of the stone. Rust licks the hinges of its iron-bound doors. Moss pushes out from between cobbles as if trying to retake what stone once stole. And yet, it endures. The gate is always there. Some say it grows heavier each decade, as if burdened by the passing of those that watches come and go. Tonight, the storm is gentle. Mist curls low, threading the ankles of the gate's arch like an old scarf. Lamplight flickers behind weathered glass. A lone guard stands beside the inner wall, her cloak drawn tightly, hood sagging under the weight of water. She does not speak, but her eyes trace every shape that moves. The donkey cart rolling in on tired wheels, the child tugging a sodden blanket, the figure in black robes who does not pause. Inside the guardhouse, the brazier glows with coals banked low. The smell is comforting, charcoal and damp wool and the faintest trace of pipeweed. On the wall, a series of ledgers rest open. None have been written in tonight. No names, no tallies. Just the quiet that settles when even routine dares not disturb the dark. A cat sleeps on the windowsill, one eye half open, its fur slick with fog. It watches, not for danger, but for movement, a flicker, a change in rhythm, a soul who hesitates one step too long at the threshold. They say the basilisk gate has eyes of its own. Not literal, but sensed. That it knows who leaves with guilt in their hearts and who returns with something broken. That it can feel lies pass beneath it like cold wind. That it has learned to listen better than any man. To the west, beyond the curve of stone, a faint trail of footsteps echoes. A merchant walking alone. His cart is covered in oilcloth, tied tight with rope. He does not look up. The guard does not call to him. And yet, a moment after he passes, the flame in the lantern guttered, just once, like a sigh. Beyond the gate, the lower city rises in crooked tiers. Roofs like broken teeth, chimneys whispering smoke. The sounds are muffled tonight. Even the river seems hushed, its flow dragging with reluctance through the gloom. Somewhere, a pair of boots slap in a shallow puddle, then vanish. Within the stone of the gate itself, carvings long eroded still cling to meaning. A basilisk curled in a half-turn, its tail swallowing stars. An eye shaped like a keyhole. An open hand missing 3 fingers. No one knows what they meant. The masons who etched them left no record. But those who pass beneath sometimes glance upward, not at the symbols, but at the space between them. There is a bench tucked into the alcove beside the outer wall. A priest of Amma sits there now, hunched against the drizzle, a tome wrapped in linen resting on his knees. He reads aloud, but only just, a whisper meant not for others, but for the words themselves. The pages are old. He does not turn them often. Only when the wind shifts just right, carrying the faint scent of lilacs from a window garden above. From somewhere behind the wall comes a soft clatter, the familiar rattle of dice on wood. The guardhouse isn't always solemn. When off-duty guards gather in the small room near the furnace, they wager copper on games too old to have rules. They laugh softly, tell stories of ghosts who once crossed the gate, of love letters passed in secret, of a black hound that only appears to those who will not return. Near the base of the gate, beneath the ledge where gutter water trickles, a small shrine has been arranged. Unofficial. Just a pile of river stones, stacked unevenly, with a cracked mirror leaned gently beside them. Offerings are made in buttons, hair ribbons, bits of string. No one claims it. No one tends it. And yet it is never disturbed. Some say it is a memorial. Others, a ward. A few believe it is a door. A child once said they saw the gate breathe. Not move, not shake, but breathe, as though it took in the fog, held it, and exhaled stars. No one believed her. But when she returned the next day with a handful of salt that smelled of lavender and ash, the story changed. Tonight, the gate stands as always, watching, listening. The river whispers. The cat stirs. The guard shifts weight from one foot to the other. And something behind the stone, seems to sigh. The fog deepens. The fire flickers. And Baldur's Gate dreams. Candlemaker's Row curls like a spine along the eastern slope of the lower city, its cobbled path uneven, its air thick with the gentle breath of wax. Smoke, and something older, like wood warmed by centuries of flame. No signs declare the name, but anyone who's walked it knows. It's in the air. In the golden light that spills, not from windows, but from the doors left half open, tempting passers-by with their hush and warmth. It is always evening here, even at midday. The soot-blackened bricks of the buildings lean inward, shoulders drawn against the weight of time and rain. Slate roofs strip slow rivulets onto awnings stretched taut with string and bone hooks. Lanterns dangle not on poles, but from iron forks hammered into the stone, every one hand-forged, every one a little crooked. And in each shop, a candle burns. Always. Some out of habit, others for ritual. But none go dark. Tonight the rain is soft, more a mist than a downpour, and it clings lovingly to the wax-slick glass of storefronts, refracting the soft inner glow into hundreds of golden eyes. There's the bell that chimes in thirds, never quarters, above the door of Furla the widow, whose shop is so crowded with beeswax tapers and spell candles it smells like a lost summer. Her customers whisper when they enter, not by rule but instinct. Furla does not speak, she hasn't in years. Instead, she nods once to greet, twice to confirm, and 3 times if you've asked something dangerous. Down the row, a tiny door beneath a painted gargoyle opens into Marin's Hollow, a one-room shop where the candles are not for sale. You must trade a story, one not yet spoken aloud, and he'll give you a flame to match it. A black candle for guilt. A blue one for a secret you regret. No one knows what he does with the stories, but the back wall is lined with jars, each sealed with wax of every imaginable hue. And then there is the old brick building with a tilted chimney, a place without a name, but locals call it Ember House. Inside, the candles float. Suspended in midair, turning slowly, they flicker without breeze, their flames silent as memory. The woman who runs it wears gloves of doeskin and a veil made of fine chain. Her eyes are visible only when the light hits her just so, and when she speaks, the room grows warmer. Outside, the row is quieter now. The night has drawn its breath inward. A carriage passes, its wheels muffled on wet stone, its driver hunched beneath a green oilskin cloak. He does not look left or right. He knows the rules. One does not stare at the candles too long. They remember. A cat with a singed ear sleeps atop a pile of broken crates behind the cooper's kiln. Nearby, a barrel of wax trimmings overflows, the air sweet, thick, cloying. Rainwater has pooled along the gutter edges, catching the candlelight and scattering it into dancing ribbons across the wall. Farther down, where the row begins to slope upward, a stone arch marks the entrance to what used to be a church. The gods worshipped there are forgotten now, but the building remains, hollowed, but not empty. Inside, a spiral staircase leads to a room lit by hundreds of candles, none of which cast shadows. They line the steps, the alcoves, the broken altar. No wax strips, and the air smells not of flame, but of dry parchment. A single book rests at the center, open always to the same page. The ink moves when no one is looking. Some say that if you light a candle here and speak your name into the flame, you'll never forget who you are, even if the world does. A boy in a wide-brimmed hat walks slowly along the row, his fingers trailing the stone wall beside him. He stops at every doorway. looks in but doesn't enter. His lantern is unlit. His footsteps are soft. When he reaches the very end of the lane, where the path meets the river, he kneels, unwraps a candle from a linen pouch, and sets it gently upon the water. The flame does not go out. It floats away, steady as a heartbeat. In an upstairs window, a figure watches. The curtain sways, but no breeze comes. The watching is not hostile, just patient. Candlemaker's Row is not a street for tourists or thrill seekers. It is for the forgotten, the quiet, those who've lost names or loves or memories, and wish not to remember, but to rest beside their shape. The candles here are not bright, not like torches or street lamps. They are soft, subtle. They do not chase away darkness. They keep it company. In a small niche at the base of the largest building, beneath a rusted plaque no one can read anymore, a candle burns in a lantern without a door. The wax never shortens. The wick never characters. It has burned since before the city was walled, they say. No one knows who lit it. But every so often, someone stops, touches the glass with a single finger, and closes their eyes. And the row watches. And the row remembers. Even from a distance, the House of Wonders is unmistakable. Its domes gleam with copper patina and sky glass, rising above the lower city skyline like the crowns of slumbering gods. The building does not sit in Baldur's Gate, it hovers in it, held aloft in the imagination of the city like a cathedral from a dream too large to be real. Most passers-by assume it is a temple. And it is, in a way. But not to a god. Not strictly. It is a monument to the sublime, a place where wonder is curated, preserved, and offered like incense to those who still remember how to be awed. The wide front steps are made from interlocked slate carved with forgotten symbols, some chipped and smoothed by time, others glowing faintly under moonlight or storm. Children often press their fingers into the grooves, expecting magic, and sometimes, rarely it answers, a flicker of warmth, a soft hum, a flickering illusion of starlight behind the eyes. Two enormous doors, etched in constellations and lined with brass inlays, stand open throughout the day and close only when the city sleeps deepest. They are not locked. They do not need to be. Inside, the first thing one notices is the silence. Not an absence of noise, but a rich, velvety quiet, like the stillness of deep snow or the moment just before thunder. Footsteps echo faintly, but only once. Then the hush returns. It's as though the building breathes, slowly, deeply, and one is always a guest in that rhythm. Great halls spread out like wings from the central chamber, each dedicated to a different element of the wondrous. The first wing, known as the Vault of the Sky, houses illusions of celestial phenomena, shimmering auroras suspended in glass spheres, star maps etched into obsidian slabs, and a planetarium whose stars realign themselves to match the true night sky outside. Beneath a dome carved with dragon-scale mosaic, a large floating crystal pulses in sync with the tides. The second wing, the Hall of Forgotten Arts, is dimmer, lit only by enchanted lanterns that hover in slow circles. Here, wonders of craft are displayed, silvered mirrors that reflect memories rather than faces, hourglasses filled with ash that flows upward, and musical instruments carved from meteorite stone that hum softly when the wind changes. In one corner, a display of shoes once worn by a wanderer who walked across time itself, the soles marked with symbols of places that no longer exist. To the left of the great rotunda is the Sanctuary of Whispered Light, a vast circular room where the only light source is a slow, drifting ribbon of golden flame that moves lazily through the air, illuminating only what it pleases. Visitors sit on velvet cushions and speak their questions aloud into the dark. Sometimes, the flame pauses near them. Sometimes it doesn't. But those it lingers beside often leave weeping, or smiling, or more curious than when they arrived. At the center of the house lies the oculus atrium, a chamber whose ceiling is a perfect orb of enchanted crystal that reflects not the sky above, but the sky as it was 1,000 years ago. Beneath it is a pool of silent water, mirror-smooth and impossibly deep. A single staircase descends, vanishing into its glassy surface. No one has reached the bottom. Some don't return at all. Caretakers of the house, called the Ordained of Marvel, wear robes that shimmer like oil on stone, changing hue as they move. Their faces are bare, but rarely remembered. They do not speak unless spoken to, and even then, only in questions. Their task is not to guide, but to ensure wonder is encountered, not explained. In a smaller hall to the east, known as the Gallery of Echoes, paintings hum softly with voices from the past. Each brushstroke seems to vibrate with memory, and standing before one long enough can cause strange dreams. A portrait of a moonless sea once made a visitor fall silent for 3 days, only to emerge with a poem on his tongue that had never been written, nor could be written again. The house is not without its darker corners. A door with no knob bears a plaque reading simply, "Not yet." Visitors have been seen staring at it for hours, unmoving, as though listening for something. Once a child opened it, and vanished for a minute that felt like a month. When she returned, she carried a leaf made of ice that never melted and spoke 5 new languages, none of which belonged to Farron. High above, in the dome's upper tier, is the Chapel of the Possible. It can only be reached by a spiral stair that appears at dusk and disappears before dawn. There, the walls are blank until touched. Then, they reveal a scene, always a different one, from a life you might have lived. They vanish when you let go. Some visitors never touch the walls. Others do, and do not descend again. The house does not keep a log of its visitors, but the stone remembers. And every 100 years the stone sings, a sound like distant bells and the turning of pages. And names are spoken aloud into the dark, names of those who came seeking out and left with something more. Outside, the rain never stains its steps. Lightning curves around its dome without touching. It is not immune to weather, but weather respects it. Birds do not land on its ledges, but they circle above in great, spiraled flocks. The moon always appears over its roof, even when clouded elsewhere. It is said the House of Wonders was not built, but remembered into being, a place that exists where imagination pools thick enough to shape stone. And it exists only where it is needed. Some swear they have returned to its hilltop and found nothing but grass. But tonight the doors are open, the candles are lit, and wonder waits, humming softly, in the shadows. They begin without warning, the fog-slick stairs, carved into the steep stone rise that marks the boundary between Lower City and the bluff that once bore the seat of old nobility. You'll find no sign announcing their name, no marker chiseled into the first stone step. Their existence is whispered, their path half lost to time and overgrown ivy, but the locals know them. And the fog knows them too. You find the stairs on a moonless night by accident, or by intent unspoken. The slick glisten of wet cobblestone beneath lantern light curves into a forgotten bend, where shadows pool thick as oil. There, a heavy iron handrail rises from the stone like the spine of a creature long buried and barely remembered. The steps wait. Each tread is uneven, smoothed by centuries, worn down at odd angles from too many feet, too many flights. Some say the stairs are cursed. Others say they simply remember. Either way, they do not forgive missteps. The fog here is different, a velvet weight, not quite cold, but ancient. It hugs your coat sleeves and slicks your boots, curling into your mouth with the taste of old iron and wet parchment. It absorbs sound too. The click of your heel is swallowed as though the stones below resent being disturbed. No one builds stairs like this anymore. Too narrow. Too steep. A wall hugs one side, damp with moss, occasionally blooming with ghostly mushrooms that only glow if you look at them sideways. The other side opens downward, a sheer drop into alleyways unseen, where black roofs lean like drunkards huddled together for warmth. It's said the fog-slick stairs change length. Some climb them in 80 paces, others in 200. The truth is both and neither. The stairs are not meant for haste. As you rise, lamps appear irregularly, not lanterns, but strange sunken bowls set into alcoves, flickering with blue fire. No one knows who maintains them. No soot stains the walls, no oil trail on stone. Yet they're always lit when the fog is thickest. You pass locked doors with rusted keyholes. Windows half sealed by stone or memory. Some claim to hear music behind those doors, lilting, foreign, and old. Others say the music follows them long after they've left the stairs. No tune. Just the rhythm. A presence that hums behind the ribs like forgotten lullabies. Midway, a carved stone basin protrudes from the wall, filled always with rainwater, even when skies have been clear. Coins rest at its bottom, dozens, maybe hundreds, worn flat by time. Offerings, perhaps. Wishes. Bribes to the stairs themselves. There's a step 3/4 of the way up that always creaks. Always. Even stone has memory. When it groans, the sound is low, aching, and very old, like the city itself sighing in its sleep. On one night of every year, the fog parts just enough to show what lies beside the stairs. A glimpse through the veil, old murals etched in wallstone, long faded. A boat without oars, moored to nothing. A mirror nailed into a tree. Faces, perhaps. Not yours. Not now. But familiar. Terribly familiar. They say if you descend the stairs instead of climbing them, the city changes. Subtly. You reach a lower city that feels older, sadder, slower. Names have different syllables. Faces almost match but speak differently. Dogs bark in threes. Doors that once opened don't. And if you climb again, truly climb, the version you knew will not return. The stairs choose. Not you. It rains more often here than in the rest of the city. Not heavily, just a fine mist, always. It makes stone shine like obsidian and outlines footprints that disappear as soon as you blink. Sometimes 2 sets. Sometimes just yours. Sometimes none at all. At the top, a weathered iron gate bars the way. It is always open, but it groans with theatrical reluctance, like a door in an old play. Past it lies a square, overgrown, empty, with a tree that only flowers in winter and a bench that no one ever remembers sitting on, yet is always warm. Old beggars in the taverns speak of the stairs with reverence. The stairs know secrets, they say. Secrets layered in each tread like sediment. Others scoff, calling it the mad talk of damp-riddled minds. But when the fog returns, they avoid that street. One child once descended the fog-slick stairs in a dream and woke with her hair turned white. Another found a silver key in the mortar of the 5th step and kept it for years, though it opened nothing she ever found. A third refused to walk the stairs again after glimpsing, just once, a figure standing motionless 2 landings up, back turned, humming the sound of your name. To sleep in a home that overlooks the stairs is to dream in grays and soft echoes. The house sighs with the fog. Wooden shutters click as though whispering. And sometimes, just before dawn, your breath leaves a shape in the air that does not dissipate. A shape that watches. And yet there is peace in the climb. A rhythm to the steps. A heartbeat slow enough for meditation. The city melts away, replaced by that endless ascent through fog and stone and memory. Each step a story. Each breath a page turned. Each silence, deeper than the last. And when you finally reach the top, you look back. Always. You expect to see the city below, laid out in gaslight and rain. But the fog is thick. All you see is the stairs, empty. Quiet. Waiting. It is not marked on every map, and yet every cartographer knows it exists. Some even draw it in ink fainter than the rest, as though hesitant to tempt permanence. The Chained Man's watchtower stands to the southeast of Baldur's Gate, just beyond the limits of the city proper, nestled between a curve of the Kayantha River and a forest whose name changes depending on who tells the tale. But the tower does not. It is always the Chained Man's watchtower. Rising out of the mists and willows, the tower seems older than the surrounding land itself. It leans slightly westward, as if listening to the city it once overlooked. Its stones are weather-worn and scarred by time and something else, something clawed. Ivy grows thick up its side but never climbs past the fifth window. Not once. The pattern has held for as long as stories remember. Most who speak of the place do so in hush. And always at night. They say it was built to watch the river traffic, long before Baldur's Gate became a power in the region. Others say it was built not to look out, but to look in. A place meant to hold something. Something bound. Something angry. The chain itself is real. As real as the tower. Thicker than a man's arm, blackened with age and iron soot, it winds down from the apex of the tower like a forgotten punishment. Its links clink faintly in the wind, though no one has ever climbed it, and no bell tolls above. Some say the chain goes deeper, through the earth, through the stone, and binds more than just the architecture. It binds memory, or guilt. Step inside, and the temperature falls. The air carries that still, metallic taste of something long buried, like a storm held just behind the tongue. The stone floor is uneven, the flagstones marked with boot scuffs, blood spatters, and faintly glowing etchings that vanish when touched. No one remembers who last cleaned it, yet it is never dusty. The spiral staircase ascends with no landing, just one long, slow curve upward. As you climb, the wind hums differently at each level, at first low, like a forgotten song, then shrill, like a warning, then silent. The first floor once held records, books now water-warped and spine-snapped, their pages wrinkled like drowned petals. Names are scrawled in margins, dates struck through, ink bled beyond legibility. Yet one phrase repeats. It still listens. The second floor is entirely empty save for a chair that always faces the window, and a cup on the windowsill that is always half full of water. Not rainwater. Something else. Something thicker. No matter how often it's thrown out, it returns. Higher still, a floor of chains, hundreds of them, hanging from hooks, none connected to anything. Some vibrate faintly when no wind blows. Others are rusted entirely through and still ring when you walk past. Finally, the top chamber. The room is round, domed, with a shattered skylight and a view of the river that pulses like a silver vein in the moonlight. In the center, a well. No rope. No pulley. Just the dark stone mouth of it, and the faint echo of breath when you lean too close. Some say the well is where the chained man was dropped. Others say he climbs it now, inch by inch, link by link, his presence growing louder the longer you listen. Sometimes, just before sleep, those who visited the tower say they hear the chain move. Not rattle. Move. Shift its weight across time and memory. A burden dislodging itself. And then comes the dream. In the dream, you are standing in the tower, but it is not night. It is dawn. The walls breathe. The chain is wrapped around your arm, gently, almost lovingly. The cup in the window is empty, and you know you drank from it. The well hums with a voice like your father's, or your own. You are not afraid, but you are certain you've been here before. Many times. Too many. Then you wake, and your arm aches with a phantom weight. The kind of weight chains might leave. Travelers who linger near the tower say time slows near its base. A minute stretches. Memory loses its clarity. Arguments break out over nothing, only to fade like mist. Some claim it is not a watchtower at all, but a fulcrum, a point of balance between things kept and things forgotten. In winter, ravens circle it but never land. In spring, no flowers grow within 100 feet of its base. In summer, children are warned not to go near. In fall, the wind makes the chains sing a note that cannot be hummed but can be remembered, somehow, for the rest of one's life. The tower's stone has been tested. It's older than Baldur's Gate. Older than records. But not as old as the story. The story of a man. Not a tyrant. Not a ghost. Just a man. A man who watched. And knew too much. The first thing you hear is the drip. A steady, slow rhythm, echoing through stone and stillness, like a metronome for dreams left behind. Then comes the scent. Damp parchment, decayed ink, the earthy musk of mildew woven with candle soot. As if the memories themselves were waterlogged. The drowned archive is not a place that anyone stumbles upon by accident. It is known only to a few within the city's circles, a hidden, semi-subterranean hall accessed through an unmarked door beneath the old university quarter. It was once part of the city's earliest record halls, back when Baldur's Gate was barely more than a cliffside trading post. Now, it exists in a strange half-state, preserved, ignored, whispered about. Never mapped. You descend narrow steps, worn smooth by centuries of uncertain feet. The walls narrow slightly, squeezing out sound as you go. Then, a door of iron and birch, warped, discolored, but unbroken. There's no lock. There never was. Those who find it are either meant to be here, or not meant to leave. Inside, the ceiling hangs low, draped with arching roots that have grown through the city's foundations like veins through skin. Water seeps from somewhere, maybe everywhere, pooling in uneven patches across the tiled floor. The stone glistens with algae in some places, salt crystals in others. The air is heavy, but not foul. Just old. Books sit on long stone shelves, but they are not organized. There is no catalog, no librarian. The archive organizes itself. It's said that if you walk the shelves in silence, the text you seek, or fear, will eventually find you. It may be in a codex, a scroll, a wax tablet, or even etched along the hilt of a rusted dagger tucked behind forgotten ledgers. Some entries have been sealed in glass, others in wax. A few, bound in materials you recognize only with unease. There is no light source, and yet you see clearly. The archive glows faintly from beneath the water. Glyphs pulse faintly underfoot, visible only when wet, forming shifting runes that reassemble themselves when you blink. The words are not in any one language, and yet you understand them. The stories here are not only recorded, they are mourned. One section holds records of names. Thousands upon thousands of names, of those who vanished during the city's darker days. Some are etched in ash on old vellum, others in blood on stone. Their tales are half-written. The other halves are said to reside in the dreams of those who sleep within the city walls. Another aisle contains forbidden spells, not because they are dangerous, but because they are lonely magics crafted by minds driven mad not from ambition, but from abandonment. They call softly to those who pass, like wind through chimes. And if you listen too long, you forget why you ever wanted to leave. There is a section of failed prophecies. Not because they were wrong, but because they were too late. Fates described in exquisite detail, after the fact. Reading them feels like hearing an apology from the future. Near the back of the archive, where the ceiling dips so low you must stoop, there is a door with no hinges. It opens only for those who bring nothing, not fear, not curiosity, not questions. Within is the drowned heart of the archive, a perfectly still room, its floor entirely submerged, its ceiling domed and painted with constellations that don't match the sky. In the center, a pedestal of bone-white coral, upon which rests a single page. Blank. But if you stare long enough, you begin to feel the impression of your own memories forming on its surface. The archive, some say, copies you before you leave, so that you, too, might become a story for someone else to find. No one who stays too long remembers how they exited. Some believe the archive is alive, not sentient, but dreaming. That it absorbs the sorrow of the city above and filters it into pages below, a process of slow, archival catharsis. That the books are not records but wounds. And the dripping? It never stops. Not because of leaks, but because tears do not evaporate underground. Outside, the door never closes fully. And sometimes, on storm-heavy nights, the sound of pages turning can be heard from the cobbled street above, even when there's no wind. Even when there's no one there. There are no bells here. No gulls cry. No ship calls. No creak of mast or clap of sail. Only the hush of water, brushing against ancient pylons like a whisper trying not to wake a dream. This is the silent pier, an old place, older than the Grand Harbor, older than the counting houses and dockmasters' shacks. No one remembers who built it. No one dares claim it now. It sits east of the Kyanthur's Bend, half shrouded by fog most days, completely forgotten on others. The way to it is neither straight nor marked. Some swear you must follow the sound of silence itself. Others say a ghostly light occasionally flickers there at midnight, a lantern without a bearer. All agree, you only find it if you do not seek it. The wooden planks are worn smooth, as if by thousands of footsteps. Yet there are no footprints. Not even dust. The posts that rise from the water lean at strange angles, as if resisting the tide, or responding to something deeper beneath the river. The boards hum beneath your steps, not with sound, but with sensation. Like standing atop a secret. At the edge of the pier, time behaves differently. Minutes feel like hours, or maybe the reverse. The sky seems more distant. Even the moon hesitates before casting its light here, diffusing into pale gray before it touches the water. And the stars, they're never quite in the right places above the silent pier. Constellations stutter. Shapes rearrange. As if the sky blinks and forgets itself. Some say the pier was once used by seers, dreamwalkers who could send their thoughts upriver to places they'd never seen. Others believe it was the site of an oath, an ancient one, too powerful to be spoken aloud, sealed instead by silence. One legend says it was not built by hands, but by absence itself, a place that formed because something once waited too long for someone who never came. There is a bench at the far end, carved from a single piece of driftwood, curved and smoothed by water. It rests without nail or rope. Sit too long upon it, and you begin to remember things that never happened. A shoreline of a different life. The face of someone you haven't met, but still miss. A lullaby you never learned, playing just at the edge of your thoughts. The water near the pier is impossibly deep. Fishermen avoid the area, claiming their lines vanish too fast. A few swear their boats slowed without cause when passing nearby, as if the river itself took a breath. Some ships turn away altogether, not from fear, but from reverence. As if the very mast sensed something sacred here. The silent pier does not change with seasons. Snow falls around it but not upon it. Rain dries before it lands. The boards do not rot. The shadows beneath it never ripple. The reflections it casts are always slightly wrong, always a few moments late, like echoes in liquid form. Children are warned away with vague tales. The riverman waits there, the night listener, the archivist of drowned names. But no one agrees what these things are, and none have ever been seen. Yet sometimes, on especially still nights, someone is spotted sitting at the end of the pier. Just sitting. Not moving. Not rising. Not vanishing. Only waiting. For what, no one knows. But those who claim to have watched too long from afar say something strange. The figure always looks like someone the watcher once loved. It is not a place of fear. It is not a place of comfort. It is simply a place. And for those who visit, even once, the silence of the pier never quite leaves them. They carry it with them in quiet moments, in dreams of slow rivers and forgotten promises. And if they ever return, the bench is always empty and waiting. There's a building not far from WYRM's crossing, tucked between two crooked alleyways where even the rats hesitate. Its sign is long gone, the iron brackets rusted to thin claws. Most assume it's abandoned, and by most definitions it is. But beneath its collapsed upper floors, past the ivy-choked stairwell and behind a half-rotted shelf, there's a trapdoor carved with the faint outline of a lyre, cracked neatly down the middle. The broken lyre cellar is a place known only by those who carry too much memory and not enough coin. Or perhaps too many songs and nowhere left to sing them. It is not found on maps, and its entrance never stays in one building for long. It follows sorrow, some say, or silence. The trapdoor gives way with a reluctant sigh, and beneath it, darkness, yes, but also warmth. The descent is steep, the ladder uneven, but the air grows rich the deeper you go. Not with mold, but with music. Not loud, not clear, but always just barely heard. Like the last note of a song you forgot you once loved. At the bottom, the cellar opens into a rounded chamber lined with old wood and stone. Lanterns burn low, their flames caught behind colored glass, casting soft blues, greens, and dim golds. The floor is covered in mismatched rugs, all worn but clean, their patterns blurred like fading dreams. Around the room, low tables, cushions, an ancient bar with no barkeep. Bottles rest behind it, dusty but full. The labels are in no known language. Still, patrons pour them as if by instinct, each drink tasting like a different memory. There are instruments here, resting on stands or tucked into corners. A harp with one golden string, a lute whose wood is warm to the touch, flutes made from bone and bronze. None require tuning. All know what you need to hear. But no one plays unless they're ready. The broken lyre is not a place of performance. It is a place of remembering. Visitors do not speak. Or if they do, it is in low voices, like those recalling a dream before it slips away. Most who come are not musicians. They are listeners. Carriers of stories too heavy for daylight. And when someone does lift an instrument and begin to play, the room stills in reverence. Not for the music, but for the courage. The songs here are not familiar. They are not ballads or anthems. They are laments without words. Melodies braided with regret, crescendos shaped by longing. Some are soft as lullabies, others sharp enough to cut. But none are ever repeated. Each is played once, and then never again. The room listens. It remembers. And then it lets go. There is one rule in the broken lyre cellar. When you are finished, you must leave something behind. A note, a verse, a strand of hair. A tear. The offering does not matter, only that it is real. Only that it costs something. These offerings are kept behind the bar, tucked into drawers that no one ever opens, except the cellar itself. Some believe the cellar is alive. Not a creature, not sentient, but sympathetic. A structure soaked in so many stories that it began to hum them back. that the walls, the rugs, the air, they all remember. And when too many memories pile too high, the cellar moves on. Finds a new ruin, a new trapdoor, a new wound. Others think it is a curse. That those who find the cellar are marked by music too painful to silence, and so must return again and again until they are emptied of song. And then, there are those who claim it is older than Baldur's Gate itself. That before the city had walls or gates or coin, it had music. And that music had sorrow. And the sorrow needed a place to be held. You sit in the cellar now, fingers tracing the grain of a wooden lyre long split in two. It hums beneath your touch. Not in sound, but in memory. And somewhere behind you, a new melody begins. No one recalls who built the tower. It stands alone, jutting from the cliffs beyond the harbor watch walls, surrounded not by roads or buildings but by empty rock and saltstone grass. You might miss it from afar, mistaken for a weathered lighthouse or an old signal post. But if you ever stand close, if you ever put your hand to its stone, the silence beneath your fingertips will hum with something ancient. They call it the bell that rang backward. It isn't marked on any current map. The old scrolls speak of a time bastion, built before the city was called Baldur's Gate. A tower meant to measure the hours not by sunlight or moonrise, but by something deeper, older, perhaps more cosmic. The scholars who studied it left no names behind, only a record of the bell's chime once being heard in reverse. Once, and never again. The door to the tower is rusted shut. But sometimes it opens. And when it does, what lies inside is not a chamber, but a descent. Spiral stairs wind downward, not upward, the stone growing colder with every step, though the air remains dry, curiously untouched by time. You descend through levels of intricate carvings, constellations etched into the walls, not as we see them now, but as they were thousands of years ago, or will be in 10,000 more. As you move deeper, there are windows carved into the cliffside, but they do not show the sea. They show other skies. Ones filled with twin suns, or moons too close to Earth. Some skies show stars rotating backward. Some show none at all. At the bottom of the stairs, the air grows impossibly still. Not heavy, not thin, but paused. And there it waits, a chamber shaped like a bell itself, wide at the base, narrowing to a spire above. In the center hangs a bell made of glass. Cracked, veined, but whole. Beneath it, a rope. It is said that if you ring the bell, your life unspools, not in death, but in memory. That a moment is chosen, not the one you wish to revisit, but the one that shaped you without your knowing. A summer rain on a rooftop. The shadowed face of someone you never met again. The way the world looked when you still believed everything was ahead of you. When the bell tolls, the sound rises not in pitch, but in meaning. And it moves backward. The note ascends the stairwell, touches the walls, flows up through the ceiling, and then, if you're listening, you might hear it whisper a name. Not yours, but one you forgot to remember. They say time bends in the tower. That those who enter might leave minutes later, only to find a year has passed, or none at all. That some leave with their hair turned silver. Others speak with voices not entirely their own. And some, they say, never leave. Not trapped, but content. Sitting at the base of the bell, remembering. Not just their own life, but others. Lives that once brushed theirs like threads in a vast loom. Some claim the tower is an anchor, keeping Baldur's Gate from drifting away in time. Others say it's a wound, a crack in the world where time bleeds slow. One theory suggests the bell once belonged to a god of memory who perished in a forgotten war, and that the bell remains, tolling, waiting, dreaming backward. There is no light in the chamber, save what you bring. And yet, the bell glows faintly. Soft. Almost blue. like the afterglow of twilight on a forgotten coast. If you sit quietly long enough, you may hear your own footsteps arrive behind you. You may see yourself pause at the threshold. Not a ghost. Not a trick. Just a memory looping, when the bell needed to play again. Outside, the world forgets the tower. But inside, the bell never stops dreaming. The room lies beneath the lower crypts of Baldur's Gate, lower than the ossuaries, lower than the city's deepest wells. There's no path to it on purpose. You only find it if you're already halfway dreaming, or if something has decided you're ready. It is called the Lantern Sleeper's Hall, though no one can say why. There are no doors, no locks, only a narrowing crawlspace, between roots and damp stone, that opens unexpectedly into a chamber untouched by mold or rot. The air here is different. Soft. Heavy with the warmth of something ancient and watching. As though the walls have memories. As though they are choosing not to remember you, yet. The floor is tiled in circular patterns that never repeat, worn smooth by feet long gone. There are niches along the walls, but instead of bones or urns, they hold lanterns. Dozens of them. Maybe hundreds. All unlit, at first. Then, as you step fully into the room, one lantern flickers to life. Its flame is a dull green. It does not illuminate the hall. It illuminates only you. These lanterns do not burn oil. They burn time. Each flame is the last breath of a moment, a heartbeat sealed in glass. The first kiss of a stranger you never met again. The word your mother whispered just before forgetting your name. The step before the fall. The blink before the goodbye. Not every moment, just the ones you carry too quietly. It is said that each visitor adds a lantern. That one is lit only when someone is ready to sleep forever, not in death, but in peace. A kind of rest no bed can offer, the release of a burden unnamed. In the center of the hall, there is a bed. Wooden. Unadorned. Its frame is smooth, not carved, yet it radiates intention. Like it was made by someone who knew exactly how many stories would end here, and that each one deserved silence, not sorrow. There is no dust on the bed. No scent of age. Only warmth, as if someone just rose and left a place for you. Around the bed are chairs. Not thrones, not pews, simple seats of different kinds mismatched. Some tall, some low, some with arms smoothed by countless hands. Each one faces the bed. And each one is occupied. But not by people. By echoes. They appear faint, like shapes at the edge of a candle's light. Some in armor, some in robes, some in nothing at all. They do not move. They do not speak. They watch. Not with judgment, but with knowing. These are not spirits. They are sleepers, watching another take their turn. You are not asked to lie down, but the bed is there. And as you approach, another lantern ignites. This one is gold. And it burns with the sound of waves crashing at night. Of a lullaby sung in a language you never learned, but always understood. The flame does not consume. It remembers. Some say the hall was built by a cleric who could not sleep, not for nightmares or guilt, but because his dreams were filled with the voices of those who had no one left to speak their names. Others say it predates the city itself, a fragment of a larger world that cracked during the birth of time, leaving behind this refuge. Still others believe that if you lie on the bed and stay long enough, the world forgets you. That your name fades from ledgers. That the weight you carry dissolves. That the grief, the burden, the ache of memory, it passes into the lantern. And you rise again, not renewed, but unburdened. You may not stay here. But when you leave, you walk differently. Lighter. As though a flame had passed through you, and in burning nothing, gave you back something forgotten. The lantern remains. Burning. remembering, sleeping. Everyone knows WIRM's crossing, the great double-span stone causeway that links Baldur's Gate to the distant lands beyond the Kayantha River. Merchants, guards, pilgrims, and wanderers cross it daily, their footsteps adding to the low thunder that echoes through its worn stones. But few know of what lies below. Beneath the bridge, hidden among supports and sill-black alcoves, is another crossing, a bridge not built by dwarven masons or sanctioned by city edict. It exists in whispers, told by river folk and ferrymen, and by the few who have seen it and returned. They call it the bridge beneath the bridge. You cannot reach it by climbing down from the causeway. The space is wrong, distorted. The arches stretch farther than they should. The light beneath them bends, as though you're peering into water not from above, but from inside. The only way to find it is to walk across the bridge at dusk, when the day and night are balanced. You must pause at the exact center, where the lantern posts have no shadows. Then, and only then, if your heart is full of something unfinished, something heavy, the path reveals itself. Not below, but beside. A low stair, made of stone not quarried here. Its edges are smooth as river glass, steps descending sideways into an air that grows stiller with each breath. The sound of traffic fades. The world above forgets you. And suddenly, you're walking a bridge you never saw before. It's narrower than the crossing. No rails. Just a ribbon of stones suspended over nothing. Below, the river is gone. In its place is a slow-flowing mirror, but it does not reflect you. It reflects moments. All around, on either side of the bridge, are shapes. Some human. Some not. Travelers, like you, walking silently, some forward, some backward. Some simply standing still. They carry memories. You feel them. Regrets like cold wind. Hope like distant birdsong. Each figure is encased in a shimmer, not armor, not cloth, but woven thought. You begin to walk. With each step, a sound from your past whispers beside you. The crack of a breaking toy. The hush of a secret never told. The last time someone called your name in joy. You do not feel sad. You feel full. Like a vessel being filled not with water, but with time made visible. Halfway across there is a post. On it hangs a bell. It's old, made of tarnished brass. But when you strike it, it does not ring, it sighs. And in that sigh you hear your own voice, asking a question you never dared speak aloud. At the end of the bridge is a door. It does not open to a room. It opens to a version of yourself who made a different choice. You see them, older, younger, changed. Not better. Not worse. Just different. They do not see you. But they pass you by, and as they do, you feel something shift in your chest, a loosening. And then you are back. The crossing above booms with wagons and wheels. The river flows again. The sky is just a sky. But if you look down at your hands, you will notice a faint shimmer, like dust made of memory. And if you press your palm to stone, you will hear the sigh of the bell, waiting for you once more. Not today, but someday, when the shadow of the lanterns disappears. At the end of a crooked lane in the lower city, between the apothecary who no longer opens and the ivy-choked wall no one remembers building, there is a door. It is wooden, gray, with no handle and no keyhole. It does not creak. It does not resist. It simply is dash. Most pass it without a glance. But sometimes, at dusk or dawn, when the light is more suggestion than certainty, the door appears slightly ajar. Not open, not shut. Just their dash. No one can agree what lies beyond it. Some claim it's a storeroom, others a priest's chamber. Children whisper it leads to a sunless realm where whispers grow teeth. But ask the old, the mad, or the dying, and they will say the same thing, in the same tone, with the same look in their clouded eyes. That's where the truths go. They say the door first appeared during the time of troubles, though the bricks around it bear no signs of mortar. That its wood is from no tree that grows in Farin. If you press your ear against it, and you must be brave to do so, you don't hear what's inside dash. You hear what's missing dash. The word you regret not saying. The face you forgot too soon. The version of yourself that never found its way home. If you knock, the door knocks back. And if you step through, you never step out the same way. The first thing you feel is warmth. Not fire. Not sun. But the warmth of being seen. Utterly. Entirely. Even the parts you've hidden from yourself. The air smells like old parchment and apple skins. Like yesterday's dreams. The room is circular. Lined in shelves that don't hold books, but bottles. Each filled with light of a different hue. Some pulse gently. Others remain still. Each one is labeled, not in ink, but in memory. The clatter of a childhood breakfast. The silence before the first betrayal. The gasp before a kiss that never came. A figure waits in the center. Hooded. Faceless. Neither threatening nor welcoming. They carry no weapon, no scroll, only a feather. And when you enter, they gesture for you to sit. The chair is shaped like comfort. Not familiar, but inevitable. You sit. And the figure begins to write. Not with ink. Not with words. But with what you carry dash. Your sorrows. Your joys. The weight between your shoulders. They write it all down, onto nothing, and as they do, you begin to forget. Not who you are, but who you pretended to be to survive. This is the threshold. Not a place, a process. You are not being judged. You are being released dash. When they finish, the figure does not speak. They offer you a bottle from the shelf, your own. It is silent. Still. And when you take it, it warms in your hand. You do not drink it. You place it in your chest, and it vanishes. And when you step back through the door, the world feels lighter, less rigid, more like something that can be changed. The door remains behind you, closed, silent, waiting for someone else to remember it's there. Not a passage, a permission. In the oldest quarter of Baldur's Gate, beyond the cracked stone archways and lantern-crooked stairwells, there lies a convergence. It has no official name, no sign, not even a local legend passed from tongue to tongue. And yet it exists, humming quietly beneath the noise of daily life, like a forgotten chord beneath a familiar song. It begins with 3 alleyways, each impossibly narrow, each bending as if afraid of being watched. The buildings surrounding them lean too close, their roofs almost whispering together. Windows that once faced these alleys are now bricked over. Vines grow in unnatural spirals, and the air tastes faintly of rust and camphor. No one remembers building this corner of the city, and few who live near it even walk by. It is the sort of place you do not avoid consciously, you simply fail to see it. But the veil remembers. It lives in the space between these spaces. Not a door, not a threshold, but something more subtle, more patient. It waits. And when the air stills, on those quiet mornings when fog clings too long to stone, or during evenings when shadows stretch a little too far, the veil begins to shimmer. It is not visible in the conventional sense. You do not see it with your eyes, but with the backs of them, with the hairs that rise along your forearms, with the sudden certainty that something is near. They say it appeared first after a great sorrow. Some whisper it formed the night Eltro vanished. Others claim it was always there, since the time of troubles, or perhaps even before. when the gods themselves still walked these lands in secret, and the threads of reality had not yet healed from their footfalls. But this much is true. The veil between the veils does not open as a portal does. It unfolds. Like old paper, creased then flattened. Like silk tugged gently from the weave. If you stand precisely where the three alleys meet, feet equidistant, heart open, breath held, and if the moment is right, you will feel it. Not a rush. Not a pull. But a pause. A stillness. As if the world inhales and holds it. Step forward, and the stones beneath you ring hollow, like memory. Step again, and you are elsewhere. But not entirely. It is not another realm. Not a plane. It is the negative space around all other things. A fold in existence where cause and effect curl away from each other. In this pocket, time does not flow, it listens. You find yourself surrounded by a place that does not resemble Baldur's Gate, yet echoes it. Buildings with impossible angles. Light that casts no warmth. Cobblestones that repeat their patterns like loops in a song. And most of all, the mirrors. They stand upright in impossible formations. Some are cracked. Some ripple like water. Each one shows a reflection, but not of you. Not precisely. They show you as you were once. As you could have been. As you might still become. A version where you spoke when you stayed silent. Where you turned left instead of right. Where you forgave. Or didn't. You watched yourself argue with someone who never existed. Laugh with a friend you haven't yet met. Die in a place you've never been. Each mirror is a choice, still echoing. You may wish to look away. Many do. Some collapse in tears. Others run. A few, very few, step forward into the glass. But the veil is not cruel. It is kind in the way time is kind, impersonal, ancient, enduring. Walk deeper and the air becomes heavy, not with moisture, but meaning. You begin to notice inscriptions etched faintly into walls and stairs. Not in ink, but in intention. She waited 3 minutes too long. He never forgave the letter. The rain that day changed everything. They are fragments of lives unlived, branching off into nothing, and yet, here they are. In this place, even the floor remembers. You begin to recall things that never happened to you. A childhood with different parents. A home made of song. A night under red skies. The taste of laughter before it became rare. It becomes difficult to know what is memory and what is possibility. You pass a fountain with no water. A statue of a faceless figure kneeling. A tree made of books with leaves that whisper your name. And always, behind you, the gentle rustle of footfalls that do not belong to anyone. They mirror your rhythm, until they don't. Turn, and you might see something. A flicker. A shadow in the wrong shape. A glimmer of gold where none should be. That is the guardian. It takes many forms. It is not a being, but a consequence. It does not speak. It does not approach. But if you stray too far, if you linger too long in a possibility that was never yours, it will remind you. Not with pain. With longing. A pull to return. A yearning for reality. For solidity, for now. Because the veil does not trap. It reveals. It tempts. And then it offers you a choice. Stay and become someone else, forever unraveling into echoes. Or return, bearing the weight of who you almost were. Should you choose to leave, the veil will not resist. But it will not forget. You emerge not where you entered, but somewhere close. The air tastes of metal. The sky leans a little differently. A pigeon watches you as though it knows. And you remember. Not everything. Just enough. Enough to notice the way your fingers tremble at certain names. Enough to understand the quiet ache behind your favorite song. Enough to forgive yourself for not being someone else. The veil between the veils remains. Hidden. Patient. Folded between the bricks of the city and the sighs of the forgotten. Waiting. Not for answers, but for witnesses. There are objects in Baldur's Gate that have outlasted empires, forgotten not because they are irrelevant, but because they are too remembered. Their presence is part of the rhythm of the city, like the slow groan of tide-churned docks or the hush before temple bells toll. And none is more overlooked, more omnipresent, than the lantern that burns without flame. It sits now in a forgotten niche of the lower chapel at the edge of Templeside, near the shrines given over to no named god. It rests on a simple iron bracket, blackened by time, its glass warped from centuries of wind and breath and silence. There are no runes etched on its sides, no maker's mark. And yet the metal is seamless, the glass uncracked despite decades of salt air and shifting stone. It should be cold. It should be inert. But it isn't. Inside the lantern, a light glows, soft amber, pulsing gently like the breath of someone sleeping deeply. It casts no shadows, no warmth, and yet it moves with purpose, like something aware. The priests leave offerings near it, though none claim ownership. The city has passed laws forbidding its removal more than once, though no one ever tried to take it. Not really. Because the lantern does not allow itself to be moved. The earliest records mentioning the lantern come from the journals of a half-elven scribe named Yalvin Mar, dated nearly 400 years ago. In them, he describes a city racked with grief following a plague that took nearly a third of the lower city. He writes of how, in the chapel's lowest chamber, he found the lantern already burning, though the room had been sealed. It did not flicker, he wrote. It listened. Many believed it a blessing, an act of divine mercy from a forgotten god. But others whispered that the lantern marked something else, that it had not been lit, but had arrived. One scholar, the famed researcher and planar theorist Edropiel Wine, speculated that the lantern was not a light source, but a boundary marker. A signpost between dimensions, placed to stabilize a region of spiritual or temporal turbulence. He noted strange temporal echoes recorded near the lantern, lost time, repeated sounds, footsteps arriving before they were made. He disappeared 6 weeks later. His notes, however, remain. He believed the lantern's glow responded to memory, that its pulsing light grew stronger in the presence of unresolved grief or memory loops, moments relived by the soul again and again. Several other accounts support this. Soldiers claim it brightens at the sound of lullabies. Clerics note that it dims during confession. And once, only once, a mourner reported that the lantern briefly flickered out, just as she forgave a dead brother for a silence left unhealed. The lantern does not explain itself. It does not require fuel, or oil, or spell. It simply burns. And yet, not all see it the same way. To some, the glow is golden. To others, violet, or deep green. Blind worshippers claim they feel it as a rhythm behind their pulse, a heartbeat beside their own. Some children have spoken of a figure inside it, a small one, seated, hands clasped in stillness. But when adults looked, the glass was empty. There are stories, of course. The kind traded at night between sailors and wardens and those who keep vigil. One tale speaks of a time when the lantern flared, brighter than the moon, during a night siege on the city's edge. Enemies broke and fled. But afterward, none could recall what had frightened them. Their memories blurred at the edges like ink in rain. The only consistent image was the lantern, high above, burning with silent fury. Another tale comes from an undertaker who swore the lantern spoke. Not in words, but in understanding. He had carried too much sorrow, burying plague victims alone when others would not. One night, kneeling before the glow, he said aloud a name he had never spoken. His daughter's name. The lantern brightened. He wept. And when he rose, he left his tools behind. No one knows where he went. There is something deeply human about the lantern. It does not promise. It does not heal. It does not change what is broken. But it accompanies Dash. It abides. In many ways, it is the soul of Baldur's Gate itself, scarred, unspeaking, unwilling to be defined, and yet always glowing, imperfect, persistent, real. And that, perhaps, is why the city leaves it alone. In a time when magic is named and priced and registered, when gods wear masks and faith is a currency traded with blood and silver, the lantern that burns without flame remains, untouched. There have been attempts to understand it. One mage from Kalimport encased it in a prism of detection magic, only to find her own dreams invaded by childhood memories she never lived. Another tried to extinguish it using arcane dampening fields. His journal ends mid-sentence. There is no known material the lantern affects. No pressure, no temperature, no measurable emission. And yet, anyone who spends time near it knows something changes. Your thoughts drift not to what is Dash, but what was Dash. A friend not written to. A gift not given. The feeling of a song lost before it was sung. You remember, not in clarity, but in tone, in sensation. And for a moment, you are not entirely you Dash. You are someone you could have been. Someone just behind the version that endured. And perhaps that is the lantern's purpose. Not to guide the lost, but to bear witness to the versions of us that never made it past the night. The city does not speak of it, but it watches. Every evening, as the tide creeps in and the gulls begin to quiet, there is a moment when the lantern pulses 3 times. Soft, rhythmic, like a bell no one rang. And somewhere, someone forgets a sorrow, or remembers a name, or dreams of a place they never lived. And the lantern glows, without flame, without fanfare. Just the light we never asked for, offered anyway. There is a place beneath the bones of Baldur's Gate where miners no longer go. It lies deep beyond the old smelting caverns of the lower foundries, where sulfur once danced in the torchlight and coins were born from molten gold and iron. The passage was sealed years ago, more than a decade now, not because of danger or collapse, but because something began to bleed. Not blood, no. Light. Copper light. The vein runs like any other at first, traced along the curves of the rock. It sparkles faintly under lanterns and follows the natural clefts left by ancient magma flows. But then, it thickens Dash. Not into metal, but into an illumination. It becomes brighter, suffused. And when struck with pick or tool, it does not resist. It opens. And from that opening spills light the color of aging pennies, of fire seen through soot. It is not luminous in the conventional sense. It casts no shadow, gives no heat, but moves as if alive. Slow, thick, and aware Dash. It pools like oil, coats gloves, lingers and pours. But it cannot be captured. If placed in a vial, it fades. If scraped from stone, it vanishes. But it remains in the vein. Always. The first to encounter it was a dwarven prospector named Marlek Thrum. He was honest, capable, and not prone to drink or illusion. His report, still archived in the guild hall of the Deep Stone Miners, speaks of the moment with careful wording. I struck the eastern wall just after second watch. Heard a hum. Not through the air, but through my arms. The light came out slow, like syrup, but wrong. I watched it move up the handle. I let go. I watched it think. Others followed. Some saw the light. Others did not. For weeks, they debated whether it was a hallucination, a trick of mineral gases, or even a pocket of trapped radiance from some long-dead magical forge. But then came the dreams. Not nightmares. Not visions. But memories. Each miner reported a moment relived, not as they were, but as they could have been. A handshake never accepted. A road not walked. A conversation held in a language they never spoke. Always familiar. Always out of reach. And always accompanied by that light. They say it begins behind the eyes. A flicker. Then a pressure. And then the awareness that you are not entirely alone in your thoughts. One dwarf began humming a lullaby he had never heard. Another spoke in a dialect of Elvish extinct for 5 centuries. One woman emerged from the shaft holding a strip of bark etched with diagrams no one could identify. Drawn not by her hand, she claimed, but by the light's dash. There were no injuries. No deaths. But morale broke. They sealed the shaft after someone tried to stay behind. Not for study. Not for greed. But because the light told him he belonged to it. The gate was closed with reinforced stone, warded by mages from Candlekeep, and marked with a single iron sigil. It reads only, Vein 313, do not unseal. But rumors, of course, do not respect warnings. Apprentices speak of humming when walking near the wall. A low vibration in the soles of their boots. Sometimes, a flash just out of view, just enough to make them turn their heads. Some say the copper light is not a vein at all, but a wound. A rupture between layers of reality. Not to another world, but to another version of this one. A speculative paper by Professor Daniel Vella, now banned from public lecture, proposed that the vein represents a leak in continuity. A fracture in the agreed-upon history of existence. Where something we no longer remember, because we were never meant to, bleeds through. He suggested that the light is a residue of possibilities undone. An archive of abandoned futures. And what we see in it is what might have been. What was almost chosen. In his final correspondence, scribbled hurriedly in the margins of an unpublished paper, Vella wrote, I believe the light is neither evil nor benign. It is witness. It remembers without bias. It watches the flickers we discard, the turns not taken, and it offers them back. Not to hurt, but to remind. The universe is not cruel. It is simply unwilling to forget. His lab was found undisturbed. Except for one thing. His shadow, scorched into the wall behind his desk. No sign of flame. No source of heat. Just the mark of a man who had looked too long into light that does not cast one. The guild has never reopened the shaft. But they test it. Once a year, during the last night of cheese, a team from the University of Silverymoon arrives in silence. They descend into the old tunnels, spend 4 hours behind sealed doors, and emerge without a word. No notes. No samples. Just eyes that do not look directly at torchlight for several days. One assistant never spoke again. A cleric from Ilmater's order who accompanied the 10th expedition reportedly wept when he heard the copper vein described. He said it matched visions he'd had during a near-death experience, of a road made of soft metal, lit from beneath, leading away from his own body. He claimed the vein was not a vein at all. It was a thread of soul, of possibility, of all we lose when we make any choice at all. The city does not discuss the copper light. But miners leave copper coins at the entrance to Old Shaft 313. Not out of superstition, but gratitude. Because each of them, in some way, remembers something that never happened. A hand not held. A word not spoken. a path not walked. And they thank the light for letting them see it again, if only briefly. Even if it wasn't real. Even if it almost was. Because sometimes the ache of what might have been is softer than the silence of what is. And the copper light still waits. Still watches. Still bleeds dash. Not fire. Not magic. But memory made visible. There is a room in the heart of the city that no one claims, yet no one dares remove. It is not part of any registry. It lies between two formerly numbered dwellings in the outer rim of WYRM's crossing, wedged between a boarded inn and a shuttered curio shop. The building it occupies appears derelict, its timbers sun-bleached, its stonework cracked, its windows soot and blind. No signage. No sigil. No entry from the street. Yet if you enter either adjacent structure, you will find something strange. The blueprints do not match the physical dimensions. A hallway turns slightly longer than it should. A staircase groans beneath weight that never steps upon it. A room grows colder as if another beside it breathes. It is only those who live in the quarter long enough who learn of the place. They speak of it in hushed tones, usually over drink, and always with caution, as if naming it outright would cause something to stir. They call it simply the steeping room dash. Because inside, there is always tea. Always. No one has ever seen it poured. No kettle heard to boil. But if the door is opened, through means never publicly agreed upon, there, on a low wooden table, sits a single clay cup. Steam curls upward in gentle wisps. No scent. No color. Only warmth. And the room is empty. Utterly so. No furnishings save for the table. No fire, no lamp. Just faint light from a high window, always streaked with rain, even on days when the sun rules the sky. The walls are worn smooth. The floor bears no dust. Yet the corners are soft with age, the grain of wood darkened as though by years of conversation. But no voice has ever been heard within. Only the silence. And the tea? Some say it is a remnant, a memory chamber from another time, when Baldur's Gate was young and still carved its identity from the stone and sea. Others believe it is a conduit, a resting place for spirits who passed so quietly they never quite left. Not tormented, not trapped, simply not done steeping dash. A retired watch sergeant once entered the room during a dare from his unit. He emerged an hour later, eyes damp, palms trembling, and unable to explain why he had left behind his badge. It was found a week later on the floor inside, beside a still warm cup. He never returned. The room is not hostile. It does not demand. But it listens. You feel it the moment you cross the threshold. The shift. The gentling of breath. The slow dilation of the eyes as if adjusting to a space outside of ordinary time. And the tea, always, is hot. Always waiting. A bard from Kalimshan once spent a night inside and composed a song without instrument. He claims the lyrics arrived not in thought, but in steam. In the patterns left on the paneled walls. In the way the curls of vapor moved through the light. He sang the song once. Those who heard it fell asleep before the final verse. He never performed it again. When asked what the tea tastes like, answers vary. Some say memory. Some say regret. One scholar from Waterdeep's conclave of the Fourth Eye swore it bore the exact flavor of her mother's voice. Another, a banished necromancer, claimed it tasted like sunrise seen for the last time. But all agree on one thing. It cannot be consumed quickly. To drink the tea as one would in haste, gulped, swillied, rushed, is to feel the liquid vanish before it touches the tongue. Only when sipped slowly, thoughtfully, does it linger. And with it come visions. Not grand ones. No prophecies. No cosmic patterns, just moments dash. The click of a door long forgotten, the brush of a coat on a passing stranger, the sound of one's own name spoken softly by someone now lost. Fragments, peaceful ones, and always incomplete, because the room does not grant closure, only pause. It is, in some ways, a sanctuary, a single pocket of stillness in a city grown loud with ambition, debt, and secrets. A place untroubled by coin or politics, where a cup is filled, not for profit or pageantry, but because something unseen remembers that you are still alive, and perhaps still aching. The room does not ask your name. It offers nothing more than what you bring into it. But somehow, that is enough. One cleric of Agma, known for never resting, entered the room during his annual pilgrimage. He stayed for 12 hours. Upon returning to the temple, he slept for 3 days and awoke with a single phrase on his lips. The answer was warmth. He never elaborated. Not all who find the room remember how they got there. Some wake in their beds with the scent of steam still in their noses. Others return to a hallway and find the wall where the door was now solid brick. One man kept a ledger of every visit he made, convinced it appeared to him only in moments of great need. His last entry read, "Today, the cup was chipped. I think it missed me." There is no doctrine around the room, no known origin, but it persists. And in a city so bound by ledger and coin, perhaps that persistence is a kind of grace. Because sometimes, healing is not a ceremony. It is a cup of tea in silence, a breath no longer held, a space that doesn't demand you to explain your sorrow, only to sit with it, and steep. Like stories, like wounds, like time. And somewhere in the old bones of WYRM's crossing, the room remains. Steam still rises. And someone, or something, still remembers. Somewhere between midnight and morning, between dream and waking breath, there is a hush that settles over Baldur's Gate like a final word not yet spoken. The docks fall silent. The market tarps no longer flap with barter's breath. And even the gulls, ever hungry, find their perches and cease their cries. In this stillness, the city becomes something older. Not in stone or scroll, but in feeling. A memory within the weave. A held breath in the heart of the world. The streets lie quiet beneath the weight of lamp fire and stars, and down alleys forgotten by city guards, by nobles, by those who name districts but never walk them, a flicker glows. Low, amber, enduring. A single ember in a brazier no larger than a bread pan, tucked into a stone hollow beneath a crumbling stair. No sign, no sentry, no purpose anyone can name, and yet the ember remains. Always. It is said by those who notice such things that the ember cannot be extinguished. No matter the wind, no matter the rain. Some have tried, for curiosity's sake. Others for spite. All attempts end the same. The flame dims for a breath, then rekindles as if exhaling its own stubborn breath. It is not holy, not magical in the way scrolls might mark, but it is watching, it is listening, and perhaps, more than anything, it remembers. It remembers the footsteps of those who walk the stones with bleeding souls and hopeful hearts. It remembers the whispered vows beneath shuttered windows, the quiet weeping into open palms after letters gone unanswered, the child's laugh in a corner no longer visited, the final sigh of someone whose name never made it to record, but who loved once with the whole of their chest. The ember holds all of it. Because fire, even small, does not forget. And neither does Baldur's Gate. For in its grime and rot, its smoke and salt, there are stories too heavy for songs. Histories too real for tomes. There are saints who never found the temple steps and monsters who never raised a blade. There are devotions carved in silence and betrayals that never made a sound. And still, the ember burns. Perhaps it is the city's soul. Or perhaps it is nothing more than a coal lodged where it should not be, fed by chance and the shape of the stone. But tell that to the beggar who sleeps near it each winter. Tell that to the thief who left half his take beside it in thanks. Tell that to the widow who once found, upon visiting, the scent of her lost husband's tea rising in its heat. These are not tales for bards. They do not rhyme. They do not end. They linger. Because cities, like people, do not find peace all at once. They steep. They flicker. They endure. And sometimes it is not the grand towers or gate walls that hold the truth of a place, but the ember. Still burning. Still waiting. Still listening. So as your eyes grow heavier, and the hush deepens around you, remember this. You are not forgotten. Not by the streets you've walked, the stories you've carried, the doors you've left closed. There is a grate, and beneath it an ember. And that ember holds a space for you, whether you return or not. Let its warmth carry you into sleep, into softness, into stillness. For tonight, the tale is done. The city sighs, and the ember watches. Somewhere between midnight and morning, between dream and waking breath, there is a hush that settles over Baldur's Gate like a final word not yet spoken. The docks fall silent. The market tarps no longer flap with barter's breath. And even the gulls, ever hungry, find their perches and cease their cries. In this stillness, the city becomes something older. Not in stone or scroll, but in feeling. A memory within the weave. A held breath in the heart of the world. The streets lie quiet beneath the weight of lamp fire and stars, and down alleys forgotten by city guards, by nobles, by those who name districts but never walk them, a flicker glows. Lo, amber, enduring. A single ember in a brazier no larger than a bread pan, tucked into a stone hollow beneath a crumbling stair. No sign, no sentry, no purpose anyone can name, and yet the ember remains. Always. It is said by those who notice such things that the ember cannot be extinguished. No matter the wind, no matter the rain. Some have tried, for curiosity's sake. Others for spite. All attempts end the same. The flame dims for a breath, then rekindles as if exhaling its own stubborn breath. It is not holy. Not magical in the way scrolls might mark. But it is watching. It is listening. And perhaps, more than anything, it remembers. It remembers the footsteps of those who walk the stones with bleeding souls and hopeful hearts. It remembers the whispered vows beneath shuttered windows. The quiet weeping into open palms after letters gone unanswered. The child's laugh in a corner no longer visited. The final sigh of someone whose name never made it to record, but who loved once with the whole of their chest. The ember holds all of it. Because fire, even small, does not forget. And neither does Baldur's Gate. For in its grime and rot, its smoke and salt, there are stories too heavy for songs. Histories too real for tomes. There are saints who never found the temple steps and monsters who never raised a blade. There are devotions carved in silence and betrayals that never made a sound. And still, the ember burns. Perhaps it is the city's soul. Or perhaps it is nothing more than a coal lodged where it should not be. Fed by chance and the shape of the stone. But tell that to the beggar who sleeps near it each winter. Tell that to the thief who left half his take beside it in thanks. Tell that to the widow who once found, upon visiting, the scent of her lost husband's tea rising in its heat. These are not tales for bards. They do not rhyme. They do not end. They linger. Because cities, like people, do not find peace all at once. They steep. They flicker. They endure. And sometimes it is not the grand towers or gate walls that hold the truth of a place, but the ember, still burning, still waiting, still listening. So as your eyes grow heavier and the hush deepens around you, remember this. You are not forgotten. Not by the streets you've walked, the stories you've carried, the doors you've left closed. There is a grate, and beneath it, an ember. And that ember holds a space for you, whether you return or not. Let its warmth carry you into sleep, into softness, into stillness. For tonight, the tale is done. The city sighs, and the ember watches.